ever since the 1970s, the first time they dared to build a double jump in a stadium. Millions of fans have been treated to knock-down, drag-out battles as the world's greatest athletes sacrifice everything in a bid for SUPERCROSS championships. But when it comes to naming the single greatest race of all time, one night stands above all others: Anaheim '86. That night 22 years ago, David Bailey and Rick Johnson put on a race that all others are measured by. It was a clash between two of the most determined men to ever wear the gear, an epic duel that transcended the sport. Now, in the words of the people who were there that night some 22 years ago, this is the story of the greatest SUPERCROSS race of all time, Anaheim '86.
Now, the race that all of Anaheim Stadium, all 70,035 people have been waiting for.
We had the rivalry of my rider David Bailey at the time versus the new kid on the block, Ricky Johnson, coming to the team.
So he was kind of the outsider because Bailey and O'Mara were already there. You know, he was a competitor of theirs. So here he came in. You know, there was kind of a little bit of friction, and Ricky and myself kind of did our own thing because Ricky didn't feel he was fit in with that partnership that was going on there.
And Ricky, you know, he was a fire-eating new kid, and he really wanted to prove himself. So, and David was going to do everything he could not to let that happen.
Rick was trying really hard. I could see an effort. He was trying to fit in with me and Johnny, and we'd go on runs together and a bicycle ride and practice together. But Johnny and I were so close and knew each other so well that I think Rick just felt like he couldn't be part of that.
Ricky was a new guy on the team, and you know, they obviously knew he was a threat, and they huddled together, you know, and Ricky was kind of on the side, you know, the new guy coming in.
And they killed me. I mean, their style of training versus my style of training just did not work. I was hurting myself. I was riding over my head. They had the track so figured out up at what we call Honda Land in Simi Valley. I just never really got comfortable because honestly it was kind of a hybrid track. So I wanted to go back down to my track in San Diego that John Savitsky built for me, which was, I felt, a little bit more uniform to a Supercross track, and just alienate myself from them.
So it was a good showdown right for the first race. Of course, we were a little worried, you know, start of the season here, and these guys are going at each other.
When the gate dropped, there was quite a battle that went on.
I knew it was going to come down to David and I. You know, I knew David, Johnny, Brock was going to be tough, Wardy was going to be tough, but honestly, the guy that I really wanted to beat was David Bailey.
I was so nervous the whole race that I didn't really get to enjoy it, but I understood that from the noise of the crowd, the fact that we were passing each other back and forth, it was like a Rocky movie. I kept passing Rick and I thought it was over, and he'd come back underneath me and bump me again, and you know, I was just nervous.
Me, that was part of the game. I knew if I roughed David up and I was running over his feet and I was pressuring him nonstop, I could take a little bit of his natural ability away and I could beat him. And that was my goal. David's goal was get in front of me, go as fast as he can, and make me give up. But I just never wanted to give up.
It was pretty exciting because the two of them had pulled away from anybody else. And they had started lapping slower people. And I remember the jumps were pretty extreme. It was like almost instant crash, you know, and one would save it and one would run off the track. And if I remember right, the crowd was pretty much on their feet most of the event.
If the seat cost $10 that night, probably people were using about 10 cents worth because everybody stood through the whole race. It was incredible. I mean, I held my breath till the end. I'm surprised I didn't pass out. I mean, it was great.
At times they came to a stop in corners, and it was, you know, racing, but then banging corner to corner, and people were abandoning traditional lines in order to go get in front of the other guy. And you know, the Bailey-Johnson battle of that night, and the guys that kind of got caught up in the middle of it, it was a very busy main event.
I was really worried about that because it was so close, but at the same time it was so much fun to watch, you know. When you see that good a race, you know, that's what you live for. That's you know, as a rider or as a spectator, that's the next best thing to being there yourself, you know, to see a race like that.
Well, I was wondering when they were going to switch bikes because they were so close. They went to a lot of turns, where only one bike could fit in, but two came out. It was pretty amazing.
Going into the main event, we both had fast, real quick times in our qualifiers. Like, I remember who was faster to this day, but I said to him, hey, we're both fast. I'm gonna do everything I can to beat you, but I promise I won't take you out. And we looked each other in the eye, we shook hands, and game on.
You know, I wanted to win the race, and I didn't want to make a mistake and cough up those points because Jeff was out and there was an opportunity.
Probably Bailey was a lot smoother, and Ricky was better known as the forceful. He was very forceful. I mean, he did some misses that night that probably would have taken a normal person down, but he was so strong he would just pull up on the bars and then just push forward after that.
David was my most fierce adversary, my toughest competitor, and I say that, and I'm not taking anything from Jeff, from Brock, from Lachine, you know, from O'Mara, from Hannah. I'm not taking anything from any of those, but his style and my style matched up. He'd swoop the outside, I'd chop the inside.
Well, I was, you know, right there at pit lane. Brian and myself were side by side, sticking pit boards in front of each other, trying to get the, you know, because these guys were side by side coming around there. So here we're battling to see who can get out there and make sure our guy sees the pit board as well. So, you know, it's rivalries on the track for all of us.
Friends with both of them, you know, and I had, you know, kind of from a business standpoint, David had chose the HRC pipe, and Ricky was a PC guy, so of course I rooted for him a little bit more than David, but David was a good friend too, and it was an awesome race. And you know, it wasn't until the last couple of laps when Rick finally just dropped back that I could actually savor it a little bit, but that only lasted a couple minutes.
I felt that I had everything, that there was no reason for me not to win, and the one reason that stopped me from winning is I wasn't as strong as I needed to be.
Oh yeah, David won, which was a very, very good surprise for us, obviously, at Scott, but it was probably, as Supercross goes, one of the finest races I've ever seen. There was just so much battling through it. It was incredible.
It's always nice to win a battle like that, especially when we're talking about it this many years afterwards.
The mood in the Honda pit was, David was happy. I was happy because I knew where I could gain. I knew I had the speed to beat David.
That's the whole thing, you know. Ricky was upset, but it was only the first race in the series. So you have to look at the big picture. And that's the hardest thing to do when the guys are at that age. They don't look at the big picture.
You got to be there at the end if you want a championship, and the championship's what's important. But of course, it was the race of the century there at that point, at least. So, in looking back at it, it was a great show and one that'll be remembered forever.
Anaheim was a good race for me, but it actually was the turning point where I thought I had it covered, and Rick did his homework and beat me in the end.
You know, I knew that he was smooth and technical, but I knew where I was willing to hang it out. So I felt that I can fix what's wrong. It's not a matter of I'm on the wrong bike or I'm just not as good. You know, it was a matter of tomorrow morning, I get some sleep. Monday morning, I start working harder and harder all the time, and get myself in the kind of shape that nobody can give me an excuse not to win. And that's what I did for the rest of the championship. Go after every race to win, and train like, you know, I was going for a 5-lap sprint.
It was a great race. Those guys went back and forth quite a bit, and you know, that's the stuff that the legends are made of.
Just knowing both of the riders and painting their helmets, and just watching one of the most insane races that I'll never forget. I mean, it was just insane. Those guys were just back and forth, just hitting each other and through the sand and everything else. It was just amazing. I lost my voice that night. It was truly an amazing race.
It's one of those nights that sticks in your memory. It really was an electric evening.
I have to say that was the greatest one I ever saw.
Certainly one of the greatest ones, I think, just because those two guys went tooth and nail, and when one would falter a little bit, he'd manage to find whatever it took to get himself back up there.
Yes, definitely a highlight of my career.
A long, hard-fought race for the rider coming all the way out here from Virginia, a former Supercross champion, and he's starting off the 1986 Nippon Denso Series with a blast right here. A come-from-behind blast, nonetheless. Little tough landing right there, as he's probably thinking more about the checkered flag than anything else. And here it comes, the white flag out, the checkered flag is what you see, and David the Bandit Bailey, number 6, the Little Professor, takes a surprise come-from-behind win here to open up the 1986 Nippon Denso Series.
To me, it's one of my proudest moments, and to know that I got to dice with a guy like David Bailey, I'll take it to the grave.